So obviously, as you just saw, this is my ADCOR BEAR. I've gotten a lot of views and a lot of questions on this rifle since I first posted up my original videos, and I'm going to try and answer most of them here. So for those who don't know yet, or maybe watching the video for the first time, this is the ADCOR BEAR. It's a short stroke piston AR-15 platform rifle produced by ADCOR Defense in Baltimore, Maryland. This is the standard version. Comes with a 16.5-inch barrel, 2 PMags, and a collapsing stock. Now, for those really interested in the nitty-gritty, how the rifle really works kind of stuff, I'm going to direct you to my 2 earlier videos, ADCOR Overview Part 1 and ADCOR Overview Part 2. This is more of a general review and sort of question and answer kind of video. I've had the rifle now for about 9-10 months. I got it last year, and since then it has been an absolutely flawless performer. I have not had a single failure regardless of ammunition type or load. I've shot steel, I've shot brass, I've shot multiple varieties of steel. This baby will chug through pretty much anything you're going to want to put through it. Now, the only addition I've made to the rifle thus far is this Strike Fire red dot. And as far as I'm concerned, an optic is all you really need to complete the package as it comes to you. Now, some of the more specific questions I've had are like, how heavy is it? Do the rails heat up when you fire because of the exhaust port location? And the answers are, for a M4 platform rifle, style rifle, period, it's actually pretty light. With rails and everything, it's only about 6.8 pounds, which is only about 0.2 pounds heavier than the standard issue M4 that soldiers and Marines in Iraq and Afghanistan carry. One of the next questions I got that I already mentioned was that the rails here, do they heat up as you shoot? Because the exhaust port for the piston is pretty much right there, and it's all blowing out on the rails and the barrel and all that stuff. And well, basically the answer to that is yes. The rails do have a tendency to heat up a little bit as you shoot, but I've never found it to be a major issue when it comes to usage, especially if you're wearing gloves, which, I mean, I always do, and personally I suggest that pretty much anyone should wear gloves when they shoot, but that's ultimately a personal preference. If you're really that concerned about it, you can put rail covers on here. Mostly just probably the bottom is all you'd really need it to be, just to get your hand off the rail and keep the heat up from bothering you. But I've shot this rifle for several months in Oklahoma over the course of the summer, and we had some of the hottest days on record. And even then, shooting 100+ rounds, I didn't find the heat build up in the rails to be any kind of significant issue. Now, another question I got is about the overall accuracy of the rifle itself. And to be honest, I'm really not a good person to answer that question, because the rifle is far more accurate than I am probably ever going to be. The best I can really tell you is that HP White Labs, they're a third-party testing facility. All they do is basically test weapons. They tested the rifle, and with match-grade ammo, they were capable of achieving a sub-MOA grouping at 100 yards. With military-grade ammo, I think their grouping was somewhere around 1.5 MOA, which is easily on par with pretty much any other AR-15 platform weapon on the market. Another thing that I really like about this rifle, even though the question wasn't asked, I'm going to go ahead and put it out there. This is probably the smoothest operating and lightest recoiling rifle I've ever fired. There's something about the extra mass and the rails and the way the gun operates itself, it just seems to smooth out the entire operation of the rifle. Now, I guess technically the same amount of force is being applied to your shoulder, but because it's such a smoother operation, it's nowhere near as sharp, and it makes the recoil much more manageable than, say, a direct impingement rifle. Another question that always seems to come up whenever you're talking about a short stroke piston AR is carrier tilt. And for a good reason. A lot of the early ones had serious problems with that. Now, ADCOR claims in its publicity that the design of the carrier with the attached operating rod eliminates carrier tilt because the operating rod keeps the carrier itself centered in the rifle. And at this point, I pretty much believe that. Now, if you'll look down the buffer tube, I don't know how well you can see it there, but it's actually got some marks on it, some scoring. There has been some gouging in the buffer tube itself, but that appeared within the first 500 rounds, and I have not seen it get any worse since then. So at this point, I'm just going to chalk that up to simple break-in just because of the way the rifle is designed. Now, for whatever reason, it'll get worse. I'll definitely post a video up, let you guys know that ADCOR does have a carrier tilt problem, but as far as I can tell, up to this point, I've put well over 1,000 rounds to this rifle, and every rifle I know of, when that has a carrier tilt problem, the problem has become acute by that point in the rifle's life, and that just simply hasn't been the case here. So I'm going to say that ADCOR has actually solved the carrier tilt problem, at least for their design specifically. Now, the final thing I'm going to talk about in reference to answering questions about the ADCOR in this video is the cleaning of the rifle and how, in my opinion, clean operating of a system that it is. I mean, you can just take a look at this bolt. This is a completely chromed bolt. It comes like that from the factory. I've put over 1,000 rounds through this rifle with this bolt, and it basically looks like new. I mean, it's like it was almost like it was never fired. The most I've ever had to do to clean this bolt was basically pull it out of the rifle and run a rag over it to get the lube off, and that's pretty much it. Now, the story does change a little bit when you start talking about the piston. This is where all your crud accumulates. And as you can see, I still have some on there from the last couple times I've gone shooting. I haven't really had a chance to give it a really thorough clean. But even then, 90% of the stuff that's on here will rub off with a rag with the lube once you begin the cleaning process. The rest, just put a little cleaning solution on there. I actually like to soak the piston in it. Soak the piston in the cleaning solution. And if you really need to, some steel wool will do the trick. It'll bring that right off. And so far, it doesn't seem to have harmed the piston. So unless I see evidence of that, I'm going to keep using that steel wool, and you can get this thing almost showroom new. I mean, it really is ridiculous how easy it is to clean this rifle. I can put over 100 rounds through it and basically have it good as new in a half hour or less. Alright, so to surmise everything I've said, basically, I love this rifle. It's a fantastic shooter, but it is a little pricey at $1,600 is basically what I got it for. It's not the cheapest rifle around, you know? You really sort of have to want this rifle to be willing to spend that kind of money on it. At the same time, though, I would put this up against any other rifle, short stroke piston or not, in its price range, and many above it. I would say that this rifle would compare very favorably in combat conditions or any other condition you can possibly think of against the Bushmaster Remington ACR, the FN SCAR. You know, think of a rifle, and this will compete against it, and I think it'll do just fine against any rifle in its cost class, and I think any rifle regardless of cost class.